Over the course of the last half-decade, there's been a cinema trend of indie filmmakers taking classic characters that have fallen into the public domain and transforming them into deplorable horror slashers. Characters ranging from Winnie the Pooh, Pinocchio, Peter Pan, Popeye, Alice in Wonderland, Humpty Dumpty, The Grinch, and others have received this treatment, resulting in countless poorly received, schlocky narratives centered around these beloved characters and their newfound bloodlust. When Mickey Mouse, one of the most parodied of these characters, lost his copyright, specifically the Steamboat Willie variant, numerous horrific renditions of the character sprung up overnight. The latest installment of this parody horror trend arrives in the form of 2025's Screamboat, a film starring David Howard Thornton as Steamboat Willie, an actor best known for his role as Art the Clown in Damien Leone's Terrifier franchise. We'll be discussing all of this and more on this week's episode of Studio Cinema Saturday, the show where we review films old and new, the ones you don't like and the ones that you do. I'm your host, Dalton Sherrill, and today we'll be discussing Screamboat, written, directed, and produced by LaMorte. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this auteur horror director, LaMorte actually directed a horror parody of The Grinch back in 2022, titled The Mean One. And while I haven't seen this movie, I've definitely heard of it, and the film also marked another collaboration between the director and David Howard Thornton. And speaking of the man, if I am being completely honest with you guys, he is the only reason I had any remote interest in watching Screamboat. However, let me preface that this is not a Terrifier film by any means. While I think the director and Thornton are trying to recapture some of that Art the Clown magic with the absurdity of the kills and the portrayal of Willie, I'm really just not that into it. I think one of the strengths of something like Terrifier is that it manages to be scary or shocking while also being comedic simultaneously. However, Screamboat really just dials the camp up to 100 and manages to be neither funny nor scary for most of the film's runtime. And you know, maybe I can attribute my distaste with the film to me simply not enjoying the horror comedy, parody satire sort of genre. That could very much be the case. However, even then, I think there are much stronger examples of it actually working in films I enjoy. Examples of this range from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Scream, Leprechaun, Shaun of the Dead, Zombieland, and most recently, 2024's The Substance. The difference being that these films actually made me feel something, entertained me with their narrative, or most importantly had something to say. Amidst being an extremely mid-horror comedy, Screamboat doesn't have anything to offer in terms of themes, aside from a half-hearted attack on Disney's greed and lack of innovation towards their films. And even then, the lines that either allude to this or reference something Disney in any capacity just feel forcefully inserted into the script.
It is a small world after all.
Maybe that's what they were going for with it being a parody and all, but I still wasn't a huge fan. There's also this weird sense of New York pride amongst the characters since the film takes place on the Staten Island ferry, but all of this in tangent results in a muddled tone for me. Anyways, our steamboat of spoilers is now setting sail, so if for some reason you don't want spoilers for Screamboat, go watch the film, I guess? Actually, no. Go watch one of those kill count videos and make a judgment call on whether or not you want to devote almost 2 hours of your life to watching a mouse in a sailor's outfit commit heinous murder. So basically our story begins with these two workers, one male, one female, aboard an old steamboat. The male worker reveals that the whole reason they're on the boat is to locate, actually, I don't even remember what it is, something that's going to make them rich. They open up this huge cargo chamber on the floor and release horrors beyond human comprehension. Steamboat Willie. Willie then proceeds to pop out of the steam and rip the dude's nose off. And then later in the scene, as the woman is running away from Willie, she slips on the dude's nose and falls into the chamber Willie was locked in. I actually did kind of like that gag. And then we get this ominous shot of Willie staring down at her in silhouette. And you know, that's something I really can't knock the film for. It's cinematography. Screamboat was shot on a red camera, and it's got that red camera quality when some questionable VFX aren't bogging it down. But I'm not heartless. I understand the woes and tribulations of low-budget filmmaking as a low-budget filmmaker myself. Absolutely shameless plug, but we also make narrative short films. So if you like us, you like this show, or you just want to watch a couple fun, low-budget movies, go check out our playlist titled Short Films. You won't regret it. All of that to say, Screamboat was shot on a budget of $15,000, so you definitely see the areas of production that it went to. I think most of the kills, prosthetics, and the work they do to make Willie look small when it's David in the costume actually look pretty decent. But that electrocution sequence where Willie damn near kills everyone on the boat, that shit looked bad. It was laughable. None of the electricity properly interacts with any of the environment or the people, so it just looks like the VFX editor simply dragged and dropped a bunch of lightning presets on top of the footage. When you're going to see a goofy slasher, you're showing up for those over-the-top comedic or gory moments, and this movie just fails to impress. And when there isn't much that's redeemable about the rest of the film, what is there to enjoy? On another note, I can't say I really cared about any of the characters. This goes for Willie, our final girl Selena, Pete, Amber who was the EMT, or any of the other passengers. Ultimately, I think I was also let down by Willie simply due to the lack of variety in the performance and the writing of his character. David moves like a combination of Mickey Mouse and Art the Clown, and the Willie costume honestly isn't that bad, but all the character does for most of the film is chuckle, growl, whistle, or do a little jig. I mean, he gets a fair amount of kills. There's him eating the dude in the stall, him smashing the officer up with the hammer, the removal of the captain's head using piano wire. That was kinda cool, but honestly you see it get used a lot. There's also him stabbing Cinderella through the door, but it's predictable and you see it coming. Potentially there could have been some funnier as well as more creative kills. However, one highlight moment for me was the sex scene between the officer and one of the passengers. There is some comedy in Willie whistling at them from the vent and cutting the dude's dick off. But honestly, the payoff of a penis falling onto a guy's face in a later scene was the best part. I mean, his name is Willie after all. Now that I think about it, Willie holding the guy below the ferry and the propellers ripping him apart was also kinda funny. Conversely, in a film with underwhelming performances, I thought Kaylee Hyman's portrayal of Cindy was a breath of fresh air, particularly because I buy the legitimacy of her character, despite how annoying she could be.
Let's get this jungle cruise going!
And if you don't know who Kaylee Hyman is, she plays Brooke in Terrifier 2 and 3. In this film, it's Cindy's birthday. She's dressed up as Cinderella, her friends are dressed up as the other Disney princesses, and after a long night of drinking and celebrating, the party boards the Staten Island ferry. Not gonna lie, the forklift kill was kinda cool, but I think it just lacks the tension leading up to the moment simply because I'm not afraid of Steamboat Willie. This is reinforced by the fact that David Howard Thornton's scenes are cross-cut with an Elmo-like puppet that moves in a very limited manner through scenes. It's kinda funny, but maybe it's just a little too campy. However, speaking of something that was campy that I also respected was the little animated sequence in which we get the backstory that Willie and Walt sailed on the original ferry before the events of the film. And because Walt becomes lost at sea during a storm, Willie essentially goes mad and does meth for 90 years, and then he becomes this grotesque murder mouse. I will admit, there was this kinda uneasy feeling I got when I saw the live-action photograph of Willie and Walt standing next to one another. I think some creepy black and white sequences with costumes that exude very limited emotion could have been a fun way to make the film scarier. You guys know what I'm talking about. Shit like this. Later in the film, we examine the photograph further and see that Willie also had a Minnie Mouse counterpart. This leads Selena to put together this polka dot dress and mouse ears in order to seduce Willie and squash him with a mallet, which she can't even do properly. Again, a dose of humor, but also a dose of me rolling my eyes. However, this moment kinda reminded me of how the women in Friday the 13th will pretend to be Jason's mother in order to gain some leverage. It's just kind of a horror trope, I guess. Selena's then able to stab Willie with a pair of scissors, sending him overboard to his demise. And as I'm walking out of the theater, I start seeing this end credit of Minnie stumbling upon Willie's washed up carcass, revealing that he's still alive. Oh man, they're definitely making a sequel. I will not be reviewing it. I feel as if there's nothing left to do besides score the film. And honestly, I think I'm going with a solid 4 out of 10. The plot wasn't very original or exciting. It isn't remotely scary. However, I don't think they were going for that for most of the film. The characters are fairly two-dimensional and forgettable, and there are really only a couple kills that impressed me with their creativity and execution. Screamboat Willie isn't the most exciting antagonist to follow on a murder spree, unless you can buy into the absurdity of it. His character just doesn't reach the comedic, shocking, or even terrifying heights of a similar antagonist like Art the Clown. Perhaps they should have tried to give him more personality by making him scarier, as well as balancing this with the upbeat Mickey Mouse persona. But all in all, it isn't as bad as I'm letting on. I think I was just expecting something else. If you're a fan of most any gory, joke-filled schlockfest, and it's okay if you are, there's a very good chance that you'll like this movie much more than I did. You can tell there was passion and dedication behind the movie, despite it being a Mickey Mouse horror film. We hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of Studio Cinema Saturday. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and let us know what you thought about Screamboat in the comments section down below. I should also mention that if you're looking for something else to watch, we have plenty more episodes of Studio Cinema Saturday and Television Tuesday available for you to watch, with a new episode about a Minecraft movie coming later this week. And as always, we'll see you at the next watch. Oh, you guys are still here. Huh. Well, Steamboat Willie, concept's kinda silly. He is a mouse, and he's looking for a spouse. Yeah!